brief look at today's agenda. We're going to start with an overview of Application Express. By the way, if you hear me use the term Apex, that's just the abbreviation for Application Express. We'll follow that up by looking at some of the features available within the product. And we're also going to take a look at some other solutions, some of which you may be using today. Lastly, and actually hopefully we'll spend about half the time here, we'll do a demo where we'll explore a little bit of Apex, and we'll also build an application from a spreadsheet. Okay. Let's get started by answering the all-important question, what is Oracle Application Express? Well, simply put, Apex is just a web-based application used for building web-based applications. With Apex, you can very rapidly build applications on top of existing Oracle tables and views. Apex is browser-based, and this is true both while developing and running applications. There's no client software required, so everything you need to develop applications can be done via a browser. One of the key words often associated with Apex is declarative. And this just means that we use a bunch of wizards to create applications and other components such as pages and items on those pages. And subsequently, we use definition screens to modify various attributes to get things exactly the way we want them. This declarative approach makes Apex very easy to enhance and maintain as everything is presented in a consistent manner. When I think about Apex, I like to think that it fills the void between Access and Java. On the one hand, Access is very simple but limited in features. On the other, Java is not really limited in features but is so complex that it usually takes a lot of time and resources to produce any results. Apex, on the other hand, is both easy to use and feature-rich. Apex is built directly into the Oracle database, so it's also easy to integrate with other database features, some of which we'll see later. SQL and PL/SQL are the main languages used while developing in Oracle. And I'm going to be honest with you here, some experience with these languages is very important to create all but the most basic of applications. So you can do some basic application development, but eventually you'll need some skills with SQL and PL/SQL. Apex is, since 10G Express Edition of the database, it's been integrated in. With 11G going forward, all versions of the database come with Apex ready to go. Now, the version of Apex may be a little outdated, so it's important to upgrade as soon as possible. But this is something the Apex team has made very easy to do. Apex is fully supported. In fact, there's a dedicated Oracle support team which specializes in Oracle Forms and Apex alone. Apex is described as a no-cost option for the Oracle database. You can develop as many applications with as many users as you like within existing Oracle database license terms. Simply put, the database is not free, but Apex is. Here we take a look at the overall architecture of Apex. And this is really three parts. On the left, we have the web browser. And on the right, a database. And in between the two, a web listener. Now, the exact configuration of that web listener can vary, but the overall result is the same. The web browser communicates to the web listener, which forwards requests over to the database and into the Apex engine. The Apex engine then uses its own metadata combined with the data from your tables to generate an HTML web page, which it then returns back to the browser through the web listener. This works on all Oracle databases from version 9i R2 or better. From the beginning, Apex was designed to support multi-tenant hosting. Here we see an organization divided into three departments, each of which has its own needs, therefore its own applications to support those needs. As you can see, each department is mapped to a separate workspace within Oracle Application Express. Now, a workspace is really just an independent development area. What I do in one workspace will not affect another. Also notice that each workspace is mapped to one or more database schemas. These actually contain your data. Organizations today are doing the right thing by using the enterprise database, which is professionally managed by IT. It's backed up, secure, and scalable. But more is required to break down isolated applications and data silos to provide cross-application integration, reporting, etc. We need to be able to build new applications as quickly as the market moves, and we need to ensure that all obligations are satisfied regarding data access for compliance. At the same time, IT budgets are shrinking, so we need to work smarter to meet demands. And this is where Apex really shines. Apex is targeted at the rapid application developer, the RAD developer. He just looks cooler than the rest. Apex is best suited to departmental applications. Now, that's not to say it can't be used for enterprise applications or that end users can't develop their own. There are many examples of both. But this is the target. This is where it really shines. Now, on the left, under the business user in red, you see Apex productivity apps. If you have an Apex instance installed, you can go to oracle.com and download any of 30 applications which have been developed by the Apex team and use them as you like. You can use them as they are. You can modify them to better meet your own requirements, or you can just use them to learn more about Apex and how applications are built. Since Apex was first released in 2004, there have been 8 major releases. HTMLDB was renamed to Oracle Application Express in 2006 due to complaints about the original name, but it's really the same tool. Before being released as HTMLDB, the tool was known as Project Marvel. Now, WebDB is often confused for Apex, but it's actually a completely different tool with no shared code. WebDB predates Project Marvel and was further developed independently as the basis for Oracle Portal, but these are separate products. People were worried for years that Apex was going to be a fad, that Oracle was not behind the product, and this is no longer the case. With over 5 years of history now, the product is stronger than ever. Even AskTom.com and the Oracle Store are built with Apex. Think about that. The Oracle Store is built with Apex. Here we take a look at some of the features within Apex. And this is divided really into 3 main columns. Many RAD tools provide widgets, etc., shown in the first column, especially reports and forms, the ability for our users to view and manipulate data. A few even have features seen in the second column covered as well. Validations help us ensure that data going into the database conforms to our business rules. Web services and email services are very important for any application that's going to involve workflow. But how many of them have included the third column out of the box? Translation services can be used if you need to run an application in multiple languages. That's supported in Apex. Authentication and authorization security is built in as well. Session state management, logging and monitoring, all this available out of the box. Another feature that became available with the 3.1 release of the product is known as interactive reports. Interactive reports empower end users to customize the data presentation to meet their specific requirements. The developer simply defines the report data, and then the end user can manipulate the information as required rather than the developer having to deliver multiple static reports. Of course, actions can be disabled by the developer if necessary. We're going to see an example of the interactive report in today's demonstration. As I mentioned before, because Apex is integrated within the Oracle database, it can easily integrate with other database features. Here's a short list of those features. And these are very, very powerful. If you look toward the very bottom, you'll see something I've heard Oracle doesn't quite like. And that's that many e-business suite customers have begun utilizing Apex to enhance or customize their EBS functionality, as either tightly integrated components or standalone applications. And the reason for this is that these developers have those skills in SQL and PL SQL. Now, the e-business suite is written in Java, so rather than attempt to learn such a complex language, they're utilizing their skills via Apex. As I mentioned before, security, we have it out of the box. Authentication, there are a number of pre-configured schemes you can use. One of the most common is to use the internal user repository. We'll see that today. Each Apex workspace has their own. And you can use those accounts created to authenticate your users. That's usually best for small numbers of users, I'd say 20 or less. For larger numbers of users, you'll probably want to integrate into your existing LDAP directory if you have one, either Active Directory or Oracle Internet Directory. If you use the Oracle Single Sign-On Server, you can partner your application with that and prevent multiple logins. Now, of course, if none of these pre-configured schemes meet your needs, you can always go to custom authentication. Create your own session management logic, or just create your own verification function. Once the user has gained entry into the application, it's just as important that they can only access processes and data that they're permitted to. And there are a number of features to accomplish that. We have authorization, pass-fail checks, which can be cached. And we'll see an example of that if we have time in today's demo. A problem that exists in many web-based applications today is that users can tamper with URLs. There's built-in protection for that within the product. You only need to enable it. Also, agnostically, you can use some of the other database security features, those that have nothing to do with Apex. Anything from fine-grained access control down to advanced security option. You can enable these, and then Apex uses them inherently. Now, the majority of organizations and companies use spreadsheets extensively. And every organization wastes time using spreadsheets to collect information from groups of people. And you all know how this works. Spreadsheets are sent out to multiple people. Each person then modifies their sheet, creating multiple sources of truth. These are then later sent back, and the recipient is left merging the spreadsheet back together and cleaning up any errors. Now, because there are inevitably several versions of the same spreadsheet floating around, often inaccurate data will be used for reporting.
Dan,
given
this
that
sounds
the data,
all too familiar to me, Dan.
Absolutely. I'm guilty of this as well. Given that the data is often sent as an email attachment, there's no real control over who has access to the data. So this is a really big problem in many organizations. What's interesting to me is that spreadsheets have become a part of the critical IT infrastructure of your business without even providing web access. Another solution is to use personal databases, notably Microsoft Access. But these bring their own problems. They're fragmented. With an IT infrastructure based on spreadsheets and desktop databases, there's a lot of duplication of effort and very little control over security or backups. Would you know where all the important, let alone mission-critical, access applications within your organization are stored? Who maintains them or how? They're also platform-dependent. They'll only run on Microsoft Windows. And they're web unfriendly. You'll need to install client software to work with them over the web, but Microsoft Access nor Spreadsheets allow access from anywhere in a web browser. And Microsoft Access cannot be deployed to the web. When it comes to security, sure, they offer some basic password protection, but you can buy password cracks on the internet. The data is not secure, and security is impossible to implement with personal databases, as you never know, one, who looked up which data, and two, who updated certain cells in the sheet. You also have to worry about copying. It's very easy for someone to walk away with the entire application on a thumb drive. When it comes to maintenance, backups are inconsistent as they become the responsibility of the individual. They're not centralized. Everything becomes scattered. You can have these files on different file servers, desktops, even laptops. Overall, this is really just an inefficient use of IT, which often has to adopt these applications undocumented with poor data modeling and still some manual processes involved. The solution? Personal opinion here, but leverage Apex. Apex has built-in direct support for Excel conversion. Now, conversion is not trivial and needs to be undertaken as a project. But when it comes to Access conversion, even Oracle Forms conversion, support is built into the product that helps you manage that project. And we'll do some of the legwork for conversion as well, built in. Okay, it's time for the demo, but before we get into that, I'd like to take just a moment and pass the presenter ball over to Gary.
Thanks, Dan. Folks, we just want to let you know, just briefly, we're about an upcoming class we're having on Apex. It's November 16 to 20. It's an online class. This will be for individuals to join. Dan is the teacher. He's the one that does presentation. He's the one that teaches. We also have an advanced class that we're running in December. And if you have 3 or more students in the class from an organization, we basically hold the classes just for you. It's a private class then, and the class gets tailored to meet your needs. Finally, we're here for your Apex consulting, and mentoring needs as well. Just give us a call, Gary, Belkey at SkillBuilders, and we'll love to talk to you. That's it. Thanks, everybody, and Dan, you can start the demo.
Thank you, Gary. All right, let's take a look here. All right, currently I'm at the login screen for an Apex workspace. I talked about those briefly. This is how we distinguish which workspace we'd like to enter. We need to enter the workspace name as well as our credentials. Now, when you first come into Apex, you land at the workspace homepage. From here, you can see how Apex is divided into 3 main components, the first of which is the application builder. This is where we spend the majority of our time. Here we create applications, pages, and then various components within those pages. There's also the SQL Workshop. This allows us to work with the underlying database objects, the tables and views, for example. Now, if you already use a tool like Toad or SQL Developer, by all means continue to use that tool, but this can be very convenient if you do not have that tool available. There's also a number of utilities built into Apex. Let's take a look at those. We start here with data load and unload. This is just a tool that helps you to bring data in or out of tables within your schema. You can generate DDL, the code necessary to recreate the database objects in another environment. You can also run reports on those objects. The recycle bin can be a bit of a lifesaver. If you ever drop or delete a table on accident, you can often recover it via the recycle bin. The database monitor and about database require a higher level privilege level, but they can be used to gain insight into your database. The schema comparison is a tool where if your Apex workspace has visibility on multiple schemas, you can compare those schemas and see what the differences are. And I saved Apex views for last because these are very important. They're also referred to as the Apex internal views. They're used to gain insight into that metadata. Don't forget, Apex is built entirely of metadata. So if you, for example, wanted to run a report that ensures your applications are being built to certain standards, you can use these Apex views to do so. One example would be that all of the labels for your items end with a semicolon. You can gain a lot of insight into your applications through these views. Going into the SQL Workshop, one of the other main components of Apex, you can see that it's further subdivided into 4 main parts. The Object Browser allows us to both view and manipulate underlying database objects. We can view tables, the columns, their data types, as well as the data within them, and even modify the data. There's the SQL command window, which enables us to be able to type in commands on the fly, ad hoc. You can see the results below. We have SQL scripts, the ability to upload and run scripts against the database. And finally, a query builder. For those who aren't very familiar with SQL, you can use this graphical tool to both create and save SQL statements. So those are the other two components, the utilities in the SQL workshop. But before we get into the application builder, I want to show you that Apex, the workspace user repository. So here under administration, I see Manage Application Express Users. When I click on that, I'm presented with two tabs, users and groups. We can create groups and then assign users to them, use that for security. What I'm going to do is create a new user, and on the right you can see under Manage Users that there are three main types of users. The red and yellow users are developers. One just has more privileges than the other. And then the green is an end user. Now, an end user would never be able to get to the back of the house, so to speak. They would only see the front side of our applications, the running application. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and create just an end user. We'll create John Doe. And to make this user just an end user, I'm going to switch this privilege option here to no. We'll click on Create User, and we can see John Doe here. Okay, now I'm going to go back to the Apex Workspace homepage, and now we're going to go into the Application Builder. Again, this is where we'll spend the majority of our time. Now, there's three main screens I want to show you today. The first one we're looking at here is called the Application Builder homepage, which lists all of the applications in your workspace. In this case, there's three. If you click on the name of an application, you go down one level further to the Application homepage, which lists all of the pages in this particular application. And finally, if you click on that, a page here, you go one layer down, and now you see the Edit Page screen, which shows you everything that is on this page, from regions to buttons and items, and even has some convenient links to shared components which are used throughout the application. So those are three of the most important pages within the Application Builder. I'm going to go back to the Application Builder homepage, and we're going to create a new application. Now, there's three main options for creating new applications. The one on the left is the one you'll use most often. This is create an application when, say, you have a new project you're starting on. The one on the right, demonstration application, you can install a couple demo apps to help learn how to use Apex. But the option we'll be using today is to create an application from a spreadsheet. Now, this particular option is not one that you'll utilize very often. It's useful, however, when you're new to Apex 1 and you're trying to wean yourself off of spreadsheets. Now, before we continue, I want to show you the spreadsheet we'll be working with today.
There's two questions in the queue, whenever you have time.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Does Apex create a schema in the database? If it does, what is the default?
Well, when you install Apex, it does create a new schema. It's known as the flows schema, and the name of that schema will vary depending on the version of Apex. They sort of include the version information in the name of the schema. When that's installed, all of the objects that Apex needs to run are installed along with it. Now, there's a second part of the installation. There's some files, because we're working in a web-based world, that go external to the database. They go on the file server. Did that answer the question?
I think so. And
okay.
Do you know if you can convert Oracle reports, it says JSP file, into Apex?
Absolutely. That's part of the Oracle Forms conversion utility.
Okay.
Now, that became available with Apex 3.2, the most recent version.
Right.
And the way that works, you're basically going to use the XML export feature of the report builder to get an XML file, which can then be uploaded into Apex, and you can convert it from there.
Dan, this is a plug, but is that what you're speaking on at NYOUG in December? Or
Correct.
No,
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Great.
We'll be doing a presentation on Oracle Forms conversion to Apex. Several places, actually. We'll probably do a webinar on it as well.
Okay.
Okay, so let me show you the... Are there any more questions, Gary?
There's one other one. I think we sort of touched on this, but can I leverage Apex to reduce e-business suite application customizations?
Yeah, absolutely,
Sounds
especially
like
if you have knowledge in SQL and PL/SQL rather than Java. Now, of course, that suite enables you to create custom apps in Java, or make certain customizations in Java. So if you have skills and talent there, you can utilize that. But if your skills are more on the side of SQL and PL/SQL, then Apex is probably the better tool.
Okay, great. All right, Dan. Thank you very much.
Sure, anytime. So before we go ahead and create the app, I want to show you the Excel sheet we're working with. Here it is, a very basic Excel sheet. Notice that the first row contains column headers, so we know what we're working with. And the rest of the rows are just data. And we have a little over 100 rows here. This is just standard employee data. All right, now the first thing you need to do to convert a spreadsheet like this is to save it in the CSV file format. And that's really easy. Just go to File, Save As, and select that format. Once you've done that, you can go ahead and convert it. So we'll continue on from here. Now I'm going to choose to upload my file. You could just copy and paste the data. And I'll select the file that I want to convert. Notice it's the CSV. You can specify the separator and the enclosure. And notice this checkbox here, first row contains column names. Well, when we proceed to the next step, Oracle is going to help us, I should say Apex rather, is going to help us create a table to hold this data. And it uses that first row in the column headers, the column names here. We need to give the table a name. We'll call this one Employees. And in addition to the column names, notice that each column has a data type. It got most of them right. As you can see, even at the end, it got salary as a number. But the date of birth it got wrong. It interpreted that as a character or a string value. We need to convert that to a date. And I can specify the date format here. It's the standard month, day, and year. Everything else looks okay, so we'll go ahead and continue. Here we specify various labels that Apex will use throughout the application it's going to create for us. Everything else looks good here. And at this point, we're given the opportunity to create a couple additional pages. Now, I want to focus solely on the interactive report and some security features if we have time. So I'm going to skip these pages. Notice the report implementation is set to interactive, so it'll create that interactive report. We could choose classic, but I really want to show you this newer report. Here we can choose from one of the 20 canned themes within the Apex instance. You can create your own if your organization has a set look and feel for your applications. Theme 19 was developed solely for web-based apps, so if you're trying to create applications for maybe any kind of iPhone or a BlackBerry mobile device, you can use Theme 19 to get a jump start on that. I'm going to choose Theme 20. It's the newer sort of Web 2.0 look and feel. Here we just confirm our choices, and Apex goes ahead then and creates the application. Now, before we run the application, I'd like to first show you exactly what it created. And I'm going to take you to the application homepage. Remember, this is the page that shows all of the pages that are associated with our new application. So we have here a total of 5 pages. We have a report page. That'll be used for people to view the data within the newly created table. We have an insert form to create new records, an update form to create or update various records. And the success page, this is where the user would go after having successfully inserted a new record. And then there's a login page. Now let's go ahead and run the app. And the first thing you'll notice is that I can't just get in to see the data. And that's because Apex has chosen to use the internal user repository for authentication. We could, of course, change this. But remember, I created a user, JDoe. So I'm going to go ahead and use that particular user now to log into the application. So out of the box, we have authentication. We can keep the wrong eyes out of the data. Now once we come in, here's our interactive report. We're going to take a look at some of the functionality in this report in just a second, but before I want to show you some of the other pages. If I click the Create button, we go to the form where we can create a new record. If I click one of the Edit buttons next to the data, we go to the Update form where we can modify various records. We can also use these buttons to toggle through the other records. Let's take a closer look here at the interactive report. This is a very powerful report. Now we've chosen to expose really all the data in that particular table to the user, and now the user can do whatever they like with it, customize this however. They can add filters using this top bar here, but they also have this action menu with a number of options. They can select various columns, hide them entirely, or reorder them, add multiple filters or sort options. To get a nice visual break in the data, you can use a control break. I'm going to enable this option, and we'll do the control break by the department. When I apply that, notice now that the data is broken up by department. And that particular feature works really nice with this aggregate ability. So I'll apply an aggregate to the salary column, and we'll look at the average salary by department. So notice that that aggregate function is applied now to each control break. And those with multiple rows give us the appropriate average. Another really cool feature of this particular report is the ability to create charts. Let's take a look at a chart with the same kind of data. We'll see the average salary by department. So the label, I want to display the department name. The value will work with the salary. And the function I want to apply is the average. When I click Apply, we get a great-looking chart. And as usual, you know, a picture's worth 1,000 words. Here we got the president with a nice piece of the pie, but I'm a little worried about IT. Not looking so good for us.
Why is that, Dan?
I don't know. We could make a couple changes. So we'll flip this back then to viewing the report. And I just want to show you one other feature here. And that's the ability to download the report. And notice we can do so right back to the CSV format that we originally brought in. So if you need that format, you can go right back to it and use that in Excel. Now, if we had hooked this particular Apex instance up with a report server, we could also get PDF, XLS, RTF, a couple different options. How we doing
is
for
that
time?
where BI Publisher works best?
Yep, BI Publisher is the best option for that. If it's also the most expensive. If you can't afford BI Publisher, you can use another, well, one of several other FOP options that really just do PDF is the standard. Okay, it looks like we're doing all right for time, so I want to go ahead then and show you some of the security features. Now, you've already seen authentication. That was
Are you going to show, too, how the folks wouldn't maybe have access to the salary column?
Yeah, I'm going to do that right now.
Great. Okay.
So you've already seen authentication, and that was the means through which we established the end user's identity with the login credentials, right? And we're currently logged in, you can see in the bottom here, as JDoe. Now, the next step then is once the user comes into the app, you want to limit what they're able to see and do, and we do that through authorization. So let me show you how authorization schemes work in Apex. I'll first go back to the application homepage, and you'll see shared components here. I'm going to drill down on the shared component screen, and notice there's a whole section on security. I'm going to go into authorization schemes, and we currently don't have any. So we'll create a new one from scratch. And I'll call this is admin. You can call it whatever you like. Now the type here, we're going to choose PL/SQL function returning Boolean. Now remember, as I said before, to create very basic apps, you don't need any knowledge of SQL or PL/SQL. We've already created an entire app without knowing anything about them. But here, when I want to extend the application a little further, I'll need to know a little bit about SQL and PL/SQL. This is just a little snippet. And all this does is returns back the result of this check. Now, app user is a global variable that tells me the name of the currently logged in user. So this returns back is app user equal to admin. This will return back true or false. So that's associated with the name here is admin, true or false. The only other thing I need to specify is the error message that would be returned if the check fails. And notice that we can cache this check if we like, or evaluate it once per page view. Go ahead and create this. And now that we have an authorization scheme defined in the shared components, we can now apply that anywhere in our application. We can apply it as high as the application level, or get more granular with it. We can go down to the page level, region level. We can even do buttons, items, processes. Almost everything in Apex can be tied down to one of these authorization schemes once they're created. What we want to do is hide the salary column from anyone that is not an admin. So I'm going back to the edit page screen. Remember, this is one of those main screens that we're always working with. I'm going to drill down on my interactive report here. We can see the columns in this report, and the one I want to work with is salary. I'm going to use these links at the top to drill down on authorization. And when I drop these selections, you see the is admin, the one we just created. So I'll select that, apply the change, and when we run the page, notice that J. Doe, who is not an admin, is no longer able to see or work with the salary column. Now if I log out of the application and log back in as admin, admin is able to work with the salary column. So those are some basics with authentication and authorization.
I have a quick question for you, Dan.
Sure.
Can we authenticate using the same eBusiness Suite authentication credentials?
Yes, absolutely. It's a bit of a technical topic, but yes, you can.
Okay, great.
If you remember the name of that user, I could get, or the name of that person, I could get them some more information after the webinar.
Okay. A general question. I don't know if you can answer this one or not. How to leverage Apex for DBAs? I don't know if you...
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the truth is that most DBAs are going to prefer to work with some more standard tools such as Toad or SQL Developer or any number of other tools that are meant only to work with the database, not really create applications. Having said that, if there are a number of reports that you run to check the database, different queries, things like that, you could, as a DBA, create yourself an application to sort of house that and present the information a little bit easier than having to run them all one by one. So that's maybe a way you could do that, is to create your own custom application that presents all the information you're looking for. And I'll be honest with you, that's already really been done in Enterprise Manager, but you could recreate or duplicate a lot of that functionality on your own here.
Great. Okay.
All right. Well, that's all I really had to show you in the demo, but what I'd like to do now is show you a couple of sites where the developers have gone ahead and created some really impressive themes. So one of the complaints we often hear about Apex now, I'm actually quite satisfied with what we get here. I think For applications, they look fine. But for websites, public-facing websites, you often want to customize the look and feel of what is usually an application. So here's a couple of examples of that. What we're seeing here is the Oracle store. As I mentioned before, Oracle is now fully behind the product, so much so that they have converted the store over to using Apex. And this doesn't look anything like an Apex application. Notice as you move through it, it's not at all like an Apex app normally would be. So this is an example of how far you can take things. Also, a colleague of mine, LG, also known as William, he's based out in Canada, and so their primary language, of course, is French, and they've not yet converted the site to English, but it's another example of a great-looking website built in Apex. And, of course, they're going to very soon take advantage of the translation abilities built into Apex to convert this to multiple languages. Those are just two sites, two examples of how far you can take Apex. So going further, you can also go to apex.oracle.com. If you would like to take Apex for a test drive, you can do so by going to this website and requesting a workspace. You see in the upper right-hand corner of the image, under that login button is a sign up for account. If you click on that, you can request a workspace. Now this is only for demonstration purposes, but you don't have to install anything to take Apex for test drive. You can request a workspace. Within a few hours usually you'll get back the credentials to connect. There's also some other links on here that take you to various documentation, tutorials, that kind of stuff. So make sure you utilize this page. And that's really it. I'd like to thank everybody for attending today's webinar.